how many nights do you think that you've stayed at a hotel since this legal saga began?
Since the legal saga began, trial was every bit of 10 weeks, and then a week or so leading up to it. So that's 100 days, 90 plus days. And then every hearing, at least one day. And that's just not having a license and being out in the suburbs. Now I don't have my house anymore. So I'm always in transition of where I'm staying. So, and when Alan and Liza come in, and now Bob, and if it's one of our experts, time is of the essence. And I like to be involved in everything. So I certainly don't want my legal team convening and I'm not there. You miss one day of this case on this legal team and you're behind. We just got a discovery dump today. This tends to happen right before a hearing. We get discovery. I wonder if part of that is preempting us saying in court in an open forum that we're still waiting on this, this, and this. So then we get it, and then but we haven't had time to really distill it before we're back in court. But we just got a dump today. And it's nice because the lawyers are coming in and we're kind of all combing through it. We'll sit down tonight and go through it. We'll have time again tomorrow to go through it. So staying with them helps foster this logistically.
During this time, when there is no trial, we see you in court once every, 3 months? But what's going on when we're not seeing you? This is it, right?
This is it. I work on the case every day. From when I wake up, I'll take a few breaks. I'll have dinner with friends or with my family or both. But the hearing is, those are easy days. I mean, they're easy for me. I don't have to do anything, but it's all the days in between. We've gotten, now this is the second trial. So for any given witness, there's the initial police reports, or in some cases, no police reports. We've got the state grand jury, then we've had a federal grand jury, and now a trial, and then any interim police reports that involve some of these witnesses. So it's layers of statements, and the inconsistencies are just seemingly endless. So there's always work to do, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack, that the report may look at a first glance to read the same, but then you read it 2 or 3 times and it starts to sink in. You know, we were just looking at a police report, my father and I, a couple mornings ago, an early police report from January 29th by Michael Lank with the Canton PD. And I've read this so many times that I don't know if I've become desensitized to it, but he says to Matt McCabe when he goes into 34 Fairview, if John got in a fight the night before. And I always read that as if...
And that's documented?
That's documented in the Canton police report from that day, 3 years ago, nearly to the hour, to right now. But now that I read it, I'm like, of course he's being asked if he knew of John getting into a fisticuffs, because John looks like he was.
Right.
And those are things that I read in the moment when I was arrested and then arraigned on February 2nd. And I don't quite know the contours of what I'm dealing with. I first think that this is just mistaken. I was hysterical, I was drinking, and they've just got the wrong person. And then piece by piece it came together, like they got the right person. I'm the wrong person, but for them, I was the right person. Now, 3 years later, looking at a police report that I got on February, actually David came and brought it to the holding cell at the Stoughton District Courthouse on February 2nd, right before I was arraigned. You see something every time that you just can't see without repetition. Your eyes like preempt what you're gonna, what the next word is, what the next sentence, and it doesn't have the same meaning to you today on January 29th, 2025 that it did in 2022.
So are you going through all the police reports that you've looked at prior and all the statements?
Yeah.
You're going through everything again?
You got to go through everything again, because every time you get something new, it's not what is this on its face in my case, it's what's changed. What are they saying now versus what did they say 6 months ago, 12, 18 months ago? So you're always doing, I mean, I've got some things in a spreadsheet, that's how my mind has always worked, but some things you just have to read. You've got to go through the court minutes, go through the transcripts, but a police report today, you know, we'll read something. Liza and I were on the phone on the way up here, and it's, wait a minute, what did this witness say, or what did this responding officer say back on February 10th? 2022. Well, now he's saying this. So you've got to always compare and see what's changed.
Do you feel like you've gotten more astute doing this now for 3 years?
I feel I understand now how it's gonna, I understand better how it's gonna play in court. I think of things I was texting David constantly in the early days of this. I'd find something and I'd think, well, can't we go talk to this person? And they'll say it didn't happen that way. And now I know better how tough it is to get, and especially in my case, how tough it is to get something admitted. Even going into trial with my seasoned attorneys, there were things we thought we could show, like an exhibit, for example, like one witness, Christina Hanley. The key part of her forensic report at the MSP lab, and she's just a scientist, a civilian, but the glass on the bumper that was photographed on the bumper does not match the cocktail glass. Does not match the cocktail glass. So that means it's from another piece of glass. So that had to have been two breaking events. There's the glass that was found around John's body, the base, I think it was Lank that pulled it out with his gloves on, or maybe it was Buchnick, the base of the cocktail glass. That is scientifically proven by the state police, Christina Hanley, not to be the glass that was on the bumper.
On the bumper. But I think the jury was left in the first trial with the impression that it was the glass.
Yes, because it's so confusing. Nothing's referred to as the cocktail glass or the bumper glass or the lawn glass. It's 7-1 item 5
Right.
or item A, or 7-12 items A, B, C, D, and E. And then there's more glass found by Proctor, and that's 7-13 item A. And when you have the scientist who, my guess is worried that we're trying to impeach her when we're in fact not, we just want her to present the report. And this is, I don't know when she testified, but it's mid-trial, it's 2 p.m, it's 80 degrees outside, and you see jurors' eyes glass over, and I know what's coming. I know what that report is, and it doesn't come out cleanly. So we were thinking going into trial, we could summarize what she was saying using her own acronyms and abbreviations. Here's 712, here's 713, no match, something like that, and that exhibit was denied. So we were learning on the fly things we thought.
That happened at Sidebar, correct? Because I don't remember.
It happened at Sidebar.
Okay. So this is a very familiar spot in Boston for you. This is your old life.
This is my old life that I go by probably once a week. I took the train in and out of South Station every day to where I lived in Mansfield, and I'd come out the back, and this is where I worked for 15 years, Fidelity at 245 Summer Street. And
Equity analyst was your title.
I was equity research. My role was a sector specialist, and it was in this building at 245.
Do you still stay in contact with any of the people you worked
I
with?
do.
At Fidelity?
I would say about half of my donations have come from former colleagues at Fidelity. Half of what you're aware of that you can see has come from former Fidelity colleagues. So it's funny, Ted. I was sent home from Fidelity, from that building, I want to say the second week in February 2020, the pandemic. And I remember talking to someone on the subway. I took like a 2 p.m. train back to Mansfield, and I was talking to someone else who had been sent home from a job, a different facility.
Because of COVID.
Because of COVID. And we were saying, well, we'll be back in a week, right? 2 weeks. Little did I know, I'd reconnect with someone I had dated nearly 20 years earlier in 2004. I'd be working from home for 2 years, and then he would be tragically killed, murdered. And I've been framed for it. And I never would set foot in that building again. So it was a pandemic, and then I was suspended from Fidelity officially as soon as I was indicted.
Is that their policy?
I would think so. I would think so, that it means there's been some due process.
Is there hard feelings about that? Or could you even have kept your job even if you wanted to?
I would not be capable of having that responsibility to shareholders and trying to save my own life. I was bitter at first, but I understand it. I just had such strong, tender feelings and I still do, for Fidelity. I would have stayed there forever. I was very happy there. But as former coworkers have reached out, have donated incredibly generously, I feel like, all right, it's the company is the people,
Yeah.
and they've been there for me. And
Do you miss that?
I miss working every day. I miss just being ordinary and not feeling like people are looking at me everywhere I go.
Does that happen?
It does. I don't know that everyone is, but I know people approach me everywhere I go, and I have to imagine there's people who aren't approaching me that recognize me. But I've come to terms with the fact, Ted, that this is what my purpose is in my life. It wasn't working at Fidelity. It wasn't teaching a night class at Bentley. Those jobs are replaceable. Someone else is doing the job. Someone else is teaching. Someone else is the dean at Bentley now that my father's gone. And we're here to shed light on the corruption that exists in this state. And I feel humbled by it in some ways. It's a nightmare, and I wish it never happened, but I also feel that I can handle this, and I don't feel weaker. As it goes, I feel stronger. And the public support is a big, the restoration of my reputation, which was a big loss, has re-energized me, has energized me, rejuvenated me. But this is what I'm here for. And I get messages constantly mainly from people I've never met and from people that are suffering. And it's a lot of women that have either had like a physical loss of a spouse or a child, or an illness similar to mine, or with a colostomy bag, or have been the victim of police harassment, or some type of unfairness with the criminal justice system. And there's a lot of suffering in this world. Mine is just very visible, but I do feel honored isn't the right word, but I'm humbled by it, and I feel like this is your purpose. And a lot of people have purposes thrust on them that they didn't really want.
So people will stop you on these streets. What do they say to you?
A lot of times, so I just went to the cobbler to get shoes that I'm going to wear to court this week that I wore out during trial. And the cobbler on Tremont Street and someone in the shop said to me, just very respectfully, hang in there. And a lot of people are pulling for you. I hear that probably the most, if I could generalize the sentiment. We're pulling for you. Hang in there. I was walking through the Common when the weather was warmer in the fall with an old friend from Fidelity. And someone just was running, some guy maybe about 25, 30 years old, running through the Common, and he waited until he passed me. And this was about 5 o'clock. There were people everywhere, and he just yelled, "Free Karen Reed." People will yell that in a busy area, but it's constant. And it's heartwarming to me that this is my old stomping grounds. I used to live here in the building on the other side of this park lane. That was my first apartment. I met my best girlfriend there, and then I started working at Fidelity.
Were you in your 20s when you all started?
I was in my 20s when I started at Fidelity. I'd been somewhere before that, but this area is comfortable to me. And there was a year that was kind of in hibernation, where the general public did not know the truth of what had happened.
Right.
So I didn't know when I went out, what are people thinking? I would go check my mail or bring my garbage barrels in at night. I'd wait until nighttime, and then I'd go out to the street on Gilbert Street, where I used to live in Mansfield, and I just didn't want anyone looking at me or wondering or judging. And now I can only go out when I have energy and I'm ready to engage and I'm receptive to it. I mean, if we're having a rough day with the case or something personal, I can't just go out and be anonymous and just sit and...
Because someone will approach you.
Someone will approach you. But it always feels good.
Yep.
And it makes me think, right, these are common people. These are the jurors.
Yep.
And I've had one experience with someone saying something negative to me, and I've had, I don't know, countless, during trial. Every time we went somewhere on an average night or an average lunch outing, 20 people. In the summer during trial in this neighborhood, we'd have 15 to 20 people. Just to go out for lunch for an hour, we'd get stopped that many times. It does feel good. The contrast with what it was like before this, before people knew, it does feel good. It's just takes a lot out of you.
Have you always been high energy and sort of on the move, or have you had to sort of reach deep?
I've always worked well under pressure. I've had other challenges in my life, and I always feel stronger after I overcome them. What I've had to learn to do is keep things in perspective, not let the evil that's entered my life take over how I feel about people in general. And that's another reason when I'm out in a busy area, it's like, right, this is humanity. It's just, there's a few powerful people who don't have good intentions that have a lot of control over my life right now. But yeah, I've been I would say, yeah, high energy. I mean, I was sick for a while, so notwithstanding that period, but I don't usually crumble under stress.
In your day-to-day, sort of since the first trial ended, would you say that, do you get any free time? Like if you're going to decompress, like what's that going to be? What's that? Do you like listening to music? Do you have shows, books? Where do you find that sort of, where do you get that rejuvenation from?
I feel the best when I'm working on the case. If I have a dinner planned with someone, and inevitably the conversation at the dinner table always turns to the case, or someone comes over and wants to talk about the case. I do have shows. I try to make it a policy, Ted, unless something is really pressing that comes up at night. I try by 8 or 9 o'clock to put some thoughtless TV on, a reality show or a movie, something fictional that I've wanted to see, just to help me sleep. And the first year, the first 6 months, a year of this hell, I had nightmares. I had dreams about John. I had dreams about finding him. I had this recurring dream that he survived but didn't know what happened to him. I've not had that dream in a long time, but I found I've got to try to force my brain to shut off, and then it becomes muscle memory. Then by 10 or 11 o'clock at night, once you practice, in my experience anyway, once you practice a routine enough, it becomes easier.
When does the day start? If it ends around 8 o'clock at night, are you working from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. typically?
Yeah, I mean, there's breaks. I'll take breaks. I'll do stuff. Until recently, I lived in my house. I would do projects. I'd wallpaper or paint or work in my yard, just for health reasons, just to get fresh air, get sun on my face. Do
you ever go running, or do you like...
Yeah, I actually sold my treadmill to my neighbor when I moved. So I don't really run anymore. I try to lift weights every day for at least, 20 or 30 minutes. It just...
Is that also therapeutic?
Yeah, it is. It is. I listen to music all the time.
Who do you like?
U2 is my favorite.
Okay.
But I love anything. I love classic rock, alt rock. Seems all my friends are getting into country or have been.
Yeah.
And it's an acquired taste. I'm trying.
Yeah. No, I haven't jumped on that bandwagon yet.
I can't. I've been told my music all sounds the same, so I don't like telling other people that, but I kind of have to tell country music fans that this all sounds the same to me.
Have you been able to survive the last 3 years without falling into a depression? Or have you and come out? Are you still in it?
No, I haven't, Ted. I felt grief at the loss of John. And I've never been with someone so intimately, and then they're just gone from the earth. It's not like other relationships I've had where at least they're there. You may pass them on the street or you may text them. The day after he died on January 30th, David told me I needed to hire a private investigator, and I did right away. And on January 30th, he drove to my parents. It was still snowing the day after John was killed. My PI picked me up and he said, "We need to go retrace your steps."
You did that on the 30th?
I did it on the 30th, and it was one of the worst days of my life. No disrespect to my PI, who I love, and I'm sure he was equally uncomfortable, but I could barely even get ready to leave. I'd just cleaned up for the first time. I'd still, up until that point, still had John's blood in my hair. I didn't have any clothes because I didn't think I wasn't going back to John's house. And we retraced my steps, and I drove by John's house, and there had to have been 20 cars, maybe more, wrapped around the block. And I felt like I was looking in on my life from the sky. That that window, all my things are in there. I was just in there with him. And now I'm gone and he's gone and he's never going back, and they're mourning him and I'm not there. And so those first few months, I think I started to get my sea legs. My two best friends, my best friend and her husband came, and we rented an Airbnb in Newport for 3 days at the end of March. It was cold, it was raining the whole time. We had dinner and then we just went back and talked about the case, and it was very emotional, just a lot of emotions from all of us, and they had spent a lot of time with John. And David reached out to me while I was down in Newport, and he said, we've got some discovery, and we hadn't gotten anything but the initial police report.
This is March 20.
This is late March 2022. I was reading the discovery, and they were implying in this report from Michael Proctor that I had deleted ring footage from John's house. That was the first time. It almost jolted me, Ted, back to, you've got to start fighting. They're coming for you. This is not a case of they misconstrued my behavior or were told things that weren't accurate about me that morning. This was, oh, now they've got me deleting things? This is nefarious. What they're accusing me of is nefarious behavior, and the way they're doing it is nefarious. And I realized then when they drove me back to my house in Mansfield, this is getting even more serious than it already was. And I had my routine dealing with the grief, and it was, I woke up every morning, I prayed. I missed the kids very much at first, and my dad would come.
John's niece and nephew.
My dad would come over almost every day, and the O'Keefes had taken out a stay away order almost immediately, within like 48 or 72 hours. So it wasn't even an option to reach out to them. It was like they were gone too. And my dad picked up my rosary beads, which were on an end table in my living room, and he said, when you think about them and you feel helpless that you can't reach out to, you just pray for them. That's all you can do. So that was part of my morning routine. I would read, I would pray, and because I was up very early. And then I started to get into this routine of working on the case from like 10 a.m. to whenever it started to get dark. And I'd call one of the attorneys, or I'd call someone in my family or one of my friends, like, this doesn't sound right, this doesn't look right, these times aren't right, these names aren't right. And then it's been a steady, I get really charged by, I feel like I'm fighting, I'm covering ground, and I'm doing something constructive. I can't litigate this. I don't know legally how to maneuver, but I can at least help provide my attorneys with the materials they need to put together a motion or a cross-examination. I can do that dirty work.
How much of the day-to-day decisions are Karen Reed?
I have a strong vote in the decisions. I will always defer to Alan and David and Liza. They know best. They have the experience. But the longer this goes, I have more confidence in my decisions. Things I've suspected were happening or that are going to happen have happened. And I think that's because this is my only experience in this arena, and it's been very negative. And the motives of players in this, on behalf of law enforcement, are disingenuous, to put it mildly. And I think David and Alan have a wider sample with wider outcomes than I do. They've worked with honest cops, honest DAs. So I'm much more pessimistic right now, and therefore I just happen to be better calibrated than they are.
It sounds to me like maybe it wasn't a seminal moment, but there was a time that, the grief was so heavy, and it's almost like you felt you were getting backed into a corner by what you were seeing in like the filings and the accusations, that kind of...
I think I channeled the grief into something constructive. And then somewhere in the middle of it all, I think I know that the lowest point of this whole thing for me, apart from 6 a.m. on January 29th, was getting rearrested. And now I wasn't expecting it. I wasn't physically expecting it. I wasn't mentally or emotionally, and then legally. I didn't even know you could be upcharged. I didn't even know that was a thing. I was expecting to be indicted because of, ham sandwiches, but I wasn't expecting to be indicted for intentionally doing this now. And so somewhere in the middle of all that, there's no time, there's no space to mourn anymore, think about your previous life. It's like they've held me back at the starting blocks, and they've had this massive head start. I've got to catch up, and I've just got to put my head down and work, and it's been like that ever since. I mean, even if I get away, if I go see friends in Florida, I stay and work on the case, and then they pick me up for dinner, and we go out for 3 hours, and then it's, I'm getting some vitamin D and some sunlight, but other than that, it's the case, and that's how I feel best. I'll be so happy when it's over, but until I'm acquitted, this is the only thing that calms me down. I feel good going to bed at night knowing I've put in a solid chunk of time, that if I have to sift through these lies and this knot of lies, I'll just undo it thread by thread, and I'll take whatever you want to dish out.
How many pieces of paper have you put your hands on in this case?
I've worked a lot online. A lot of it is in Dropbox, and that was necessitated by being in this car and getting a call from, like, the whole ride up here. I was talking to Liza, and we just got Discovery, and there's not time, and it's not really efficient to print out whatever we got today, 200 pages, and digest it. But I can flip through my phone or my laptop. So, but if I were to convert it to paper, Ted, at this point, it's probably around like 10,000, I'd say. On top of videos, hundreds of Ring videos, hours of video from the waterfall, from C.F. McCarthy's, voicemails, phone records. Even that, we downloaded Jen McCabe's Gray Key Extraction, and we were in the physical analyzer for Celebrate. You don't even know where to start. Do I look at when was her phone unlocked? When was it vertical versus horizontal? Was there a temperature change in the phone? Was there an elevation change? When was the phone unlocked?
That's how granular you're getting?
Yeah, because you just don't know like John's phone, for example, when it was locked, when it was in, when the backlight was on, when did he read his last text? And Jen, for example, we went through all her location data. Well, Rick Green did, but then Rick gives us access to Celebrate, so I can go through it myself. It wasn't until trial started, the jury was impaneled, and Rick called us and said, on a whim, I started looking at Jen's location data for the days immediately following January 29th, and does this address mean anything to you? And it was Michael Lank's address.
Remember that came up in trial.
And that came up at trial, and then they tried to preempt it by this police report that we got after Jen took the stand, after she's already gone, saying, yeah, Jen was there. I don't know what her story was, trading cupcake recipes with Lank's wife. Once again, at a lead investigator's house on this case, but he wasn't there. She was talking to the wife, which is a story that
right, and she
might
said she
sound
never
familiar.
got out of the car.
Said she never got out of the car. This was, I think, the date at Lank's house was January 30th. It was still snowing that day. It's freezing, but she doesn't get out. They sit, and she said, I think she said it could have been a half hour. They're just sitting in the driveway, which doesn't make much common sense. But that location data had to be parsed from all her location data that comes in latitude and longitude coordinates with like 6 decimal places. And if you see negative 42.87356, it doesn't mean anything to you. You've got to then translate it to a map using another software, and then a lot of it's all around her house, and then maybe it's at the grocery store. And
did that come from the feds?
That Jen's phone, Jen turned in herself.
Okay.
But it's so tedious, and that was a big data point,
yep,
that she was at his house, and we didn't find it until 2 years into this. There's always more to find, so it's not as if I'm retreading tracks, trying to find something I might have missed. There's always more ground to cover. And now that the case is so public and people are so supportive, now it's trying to digest these tips and which ones are fake, first of all.
So people send you tips?
We get tips constantly. A lot go directly to David and or Alan. Some come over Facebook. Some go to the administrators of the social media pages.
What is the normal procedure? Your attorneys will meet, several days, the night before?
Whatever they can afford to do.
Yeah, Alan Jackson's coming in tonight for a Friday hearing. And so are you essentially war rooming until that hearing?
Yeah, we'll war room. We have a few tips we want to follow up on. Alan tries to jam the schedule. If there's somebody that wants to meet with us that might tell us something useful, we'll schedule it. We'll cram in as much as we can get in.
So you're still developing information?
Yeah. We got information today about John's phone that is exculpatory.
But from outside sources as well, not
from outside. Yeah, no, from outside. But sometimes, Ted, it's the internal discovery that opens up another door, another rabbit hole we've got to go down that might make sense with something we've heard. It's constant triangulation of what do we know, what have we been given in discovery. Of that discovery, how much can we actually rely on? How much do we think is manufactured? And then does it dovetail with anything we've heard from people in the community?
Right.
I mean, if I could afford to, I would have the lawyers and I'd have more PIs. My PI's great, but we throw everything at him, and we'd be trying to follow leads.
Is your
every
private
day.
Does your private investigator work full time for you?
No.
So
no.
It's
He's
as
ad
it
hoc.
comes. So.
Yeah. Sometimes I won't speak to him for a month, but he's always following things, following the case, and just give him a heads up, day's notice, and he's going to meet us tomorrow in the afternoon to track down a few things. A lot of it ends up being nothing, or it's something that's not admissible. A ton of it is hearsay, which is something I didn't know anything about going into this. Well, someone heard from someone else that parts of the basement were replaced, or something was broken in the house, and can't go anywhere with it.
So does Robert Alessi then, does he take part in this sort of day-to-day stuff, or is he more focused on sort of, he was critical in the Dr. Russell?
Yeah.
So are portions of the case divvied up then to different people to work on?
Yeah. So ideally we would be full-time trial prep, or at least full-time for me, and when the lawyers are working on my case, it's trial prep. And now we've gotten this curveball for these job requests that it's and we're expecting more. So we've gone through Dr. Russell on the dog bites, now Rick Green on the Google search.
So for people who don't understand this, so you only had 6 people testify in the first trial, and for the second trial, the prosecution is trying to prevent
most of them.
How many experts are they trying to prevent right now?
I don't know where they're going to go with ARCA, but I think
so they did file a motion about the ARCA guys.
They did file a motion. They actually filed an intent to file the motion. About ARCA. They're trying to accuse us of a discovery violation that they don't have all the available information on ARCA. I didn't hire ARCA.
Right. And that information could only come from the feds.
That information can only come from the feds. So that's 4. We're not calling back Frank Sheridan, and that just leaves Lucky Lofgren. He's the 6th one.
Okay.
So there's no other. If there were more witnesses, I'd probably have more of these hearings.
And Lucky's still.
Lucky still didn't see a body, Ted. Okay. I picture every day that they're working on framing me, and every day that they do that, and I'm taking the day off, they're getting one day ahead of me. So I only feel relaxed as I can be if I'm working on the case.
Do you think there's a greater purpose in all of this?
I am not the first person this has happened to. I'm not going to be the last, sadly, but maybe there'll be fewer after me because of this. I think it's happening to people in this, I know it is, in this county, in Essex, in Norfolk, and Suffolk, in Bristol. It's happened too easily.
Were you surprised when a new prosecutor was appointed and an outside prosecutor?
Nothing surprises me anymore. What troubles me is how evil people are. And you don't need to have a strong opinion about my guilt or innocence, but you can't be an attorney in the Boston area and not see this case for what it is, and then to want to thrust yourself in it and think you can prove this beyond a reasonable doubt.
And you said you're still receiving discovery or evidence from the state. How does that make sense after you already had a trial?
The state told us, and Canoni has echoed this, that this is a whole new trial. It's almost like a whole new case. We started getting discovery from Bates Stamp 1, page 1. Some of it is duplicative, and a lot of it's new. We've gotten brand new reports from Ian Whiffen, data that we've never seen before. From Jessica Hyde, there's a doctor now, not a medical doctor, but like a veterinarian expert. We just found out today, measured supposedly Chloe's teeth. No address, no contact phone number.
Did they take molds of the
Yeah.
teeth?
They measured the teeth, yeah.